Pamela Joy Custodio.
And I am Louella Manibog.
We're going to discuss about racism.
Racism is everywhere. It is becoming an aspect of life. Whether we know them or not, the truth accepted that in this world continue to grow. We see examples of it wherever we go, whether we're on the street, in school, or even in the workplace. It is present and grow like a virus. Racism is a global issue. One thing that I have come to realize is the fact that we live in a universe where there are differences in variety. For example, God created different kinds of animals. He created different kinds of plants. And even among us human beings, He created male and female with various differences. This variety that is inherent in nature should not result in conflicts but unity. Unfortunately, this often results in conflicts and sometimes sheer violence amongst us human beings. People tend to separate themselves based on their race, occupation, gender, tribe, and nationality. This is good in itself, but the danger is that it prevents us from seeing and understand the common humanity between us. What is racism? According to Anti-Defamation League, racism has existed throughout human history. It may be defined as the hatred of one person by another, or the belief that another person is less than human because of skin color, language, custom, place of birth, or any factor that supposedly reveals the basic nature of that person. And according to the American Heritage College Dictionary, he defined racism as prejudice or discrimination by one group to others based on race. It is also the belief that race accounts for difference in human character or ability and that a particular race is superior to others. There is some evidence that the meaning of the term has changed over time and that the earlier definitions of racism involved the simple belief that human populations are divided into separate races.
Nature of racism. Racism, particularly a vicious and insidious in form, because it stems from the mistaken belief of the superiority of people over another. Discrimination occurs when people or institutions conduct themselves in a way harmful to others because of their particular race or perceived race. There are two types of nature of racism: the individual racism and the institutional racism. Individual racism is one person discriminates any particular group or people. Discrimination caused by a number of reasons, one of which is the learned behavior. For example, if we grew up seeing our parents discriminate, we are probably follow the same mindset. While the institutional racism is an entire institution discriminates any particular sector of society. For example, racism in school. We are always drawn back to the idea of separate bathrooms, sitting in the back of the bus, and derogatory comments made to students of some religious minority. According to Carmichael and Hamilton, 1967, there are illustrations of an article which indicate that individual racism goes through to institutional racism. We're going to easily understand what's the connection between individual racism and institutional racism. In the article, when a black family moves into home in a white neighborhood and is stoned, burned, and routed out, they are victims of an overt act of individual individual racism, which many people can condemn, at least in words. But it is institutional racism that keeps black people locked in slum tenements, subject to the daily prey of exploitative slumlords, merchants' loans, sharks, and discriminatory real estate. Respectable individuals can absolve themselves from individual pain. They would never plant a bomb in a church. They would never stone a black family, but they continue to support political officials and institutions that would and do not perpetuate institutionally racist policies. Thus, acts of overt individual racism may not typify the society, but institutional racism does.
So, where is the institutional racism in the article?
Institutional racism. It's in the institutional racism that keeps black people locked in slum tenements, subject to the daily prey of exploitative slumlords, merchants, loans, sharks, and discriminatory state agents. Individual racism is when a black family moves into a home in a white neighborhood and is stone burned out, routed out. They are victims of an overt. That's the individual racism.
So, a particular individual racism will tend to go an institutional racism, right?
Yes, sir. Evidence. In 2003, researchers from University of Chicago released a study that black have traditionally suffered higher rates of unemployment compared to whites. The study indicates that, in actuality, discrimination likely contributes to the black-white unemployment gap. From North Star News as of October 2009, racial discrimination in the U.S. is very high. In terms of employment percent, black men are being discriminated in jobs, causing them to be unemployed. The seasonal adjustment employment rate for the black men dropped slightly in September, but it remains nearly twice the unemployment rate for the white men. Overall, the non-farm employment rate continued to decline in September by 263,000 jobs, and the unemployment rate rose to 9.8%. In the Philippines, according to Inquirer's Young Blood column, that there is extensive and pervasive racism. Basically, Filipinos look down on the black people. They perceive them as an inferior, a criminal, or a brute. The darker they are, the lesser they would be regarded with. The fairer they are, the more optimistic they would be towards a new. Most Filipinos fancy Caucasians and anyone who is white, yellow, or light brown. In my own experience, one time, I saw a Filipina with her black boyfriend. Her boyfriend was tall and well-off, and I think he's handsome and thoughtful. It was obvious to me that she was really embarrassed to be seen with her boyfriend.
It's hard for some people to understand why racism exists today. In order to understand, it is important to look what the possible causes are. The most common cause of racism is stereotype. It is prejudging of someone without personal knowledge. For example, when a person, especially one that is very young, is exposed to stereotype of a specific group for the first time, then the person will assume all are that way. Another example of it is the racism against Muslims, especially after the 9/11 tragedy. They view Muslims as terrorists.
In our own country, can you cite an example of a stereotyping scenario?
In the Philippines, we tend to stereotype the culture of other people. For example, In the eyes of the Visayan people, we Ilocanos are being referred to as kuripot, which means withholding a property as ours and ours alone. Another obvious cause of racism is selfishness. Humans are very selfish creatures, caring only about their own at the expense of others. If individuals aren't taught how to respect others, then the potential for the person to become racist. Another cause of racism is environmental factors, and probably the most surprising cause of racism. We are all made different biologically and genetically. Our physical environment can affect our biology. Therefore, in many cases, it affects our minds. People are often judged by where they live, how much money they make, or what type of car they drive. I have experience working with a person who experienced discrimination. Her name is Amiruddin and he is a Muslim. She had seen and experienced prejudices against Muslims. When she goes out wearing the Muslim skull caps, nobody could look at her in the eye, but she could feel eyes looking behind her back. Most people were afraid to sit beside her, and in the MRT, guards double-checks her bags as if she were a terrorist with a bomb. She experienced the discrimination since she was 5 years old. She could feel the bigotry of her classmates, and one time, her pencil rolled off her desk and she couldn't reach it. None of her classmates wanted to get it or even touch her other things, for that matter, because she was a Muslim. Another discrimination she experienced is that taxi drivers refused to ferry her because she is wearing headdress. She couldn't help but bother, but good thing Amiruddin didn't have a traumatic effect on her.
Effects of racism. Racism has many harmful effects in the past events. Were individuals treated unfairly because of their particular race? Studies found out that racism and harassment has many significant effects on mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. But I will go to emphasize more on the mental effect of racism. Frustration breeds to anxiety, anger, nervous breakdown, depression, isolation, high blood pressure, and stress. For example, anger. Anger leads to violence, and violence leads to crime. While stress can affect one's ability into work, school, and social setting.
So why did you evolve more on mental effects?
Because racism begins in ourselves. We should know that eventually that racial discrimination can have a bad effect on our health.
Racial discrimination is continuous and continuously perpetuating through their generation, such that it blinded people into the belief that they are righteous. I personally believe that racism is a very touchy subject, and that different is beautiful. So let us always greet each other with a smile, and let us all go in our own way, do something serious to stop racism. After all, we are all related, all of us on this planet.